It's my pleasure to introduce Carmine to talk about Blue Ocean strategy. As you know, there are many talks of strategies that has been going on over the last couple of months, and Carmine is here to present one type of strategy called Blue Ocean strategy. So Carmine.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here because I love business, but more importantly, I love excellent strategy, execution, and leadership. And that's what this book is all about. That's the focus of Blue Ocean strategy. It was written in 1996, so some of the references are a little dated, but I wanted to stay true to the material, so we'll keep those in there. But everyone should see how relevant it is today, especially in Symantec today. What I found most fascinating about the book itself is that it examined more than 150 global companies throughout the span of 100 years. Okay, so that's a ton of data. And what that data revealed is there's no such thing over time as a permanently excellent company or a permanently excellent industry, right? Everything must change constantly. Constant change is needed to grow demand in aggregate. And that's what this book is about. How to go about changing, growing demand in aggregate. And the way that's done is by creating and generating a new value curve, all for value innovation. Okay, so I'm very excited about the material here, and I hope I get that across, and I hope you guys are excited too. Just real quick, by show of hands, how many are familiar with the book and the concept? Wow, okay. Okay, so the book premise. Tomorrow's leading companies will succeed by creating blue oceans of untapped new market space ripe for growth. So in order to understand what blue oceans are, we have to understand what red oceans are, okay? Bloody red oceans. And bloody red oceans are considered to be where we are today, where all existing companies are today. Competition is fierce. In time, companies compete on two main things, quality and price, and that's what it's all about. And when you're in mature markets, you benchmark against one another, you try to up one another, and the margins get tighter and tighter and tighter. For example, if you go into a supermarket and you look at toothpaste, you see Crest and you see AIM, and what are you going to buy? Is there any brand loyalty? You're really looking at price. If one's 2 for 1 or so on, that's what you're going to gravitate towards. So you lose brand loyalty. It's the same way today with consumer and our Norton products. We're facing the same thing. On the shelf, the amount of units we push through Black Friday and times like that are exponential when it's a net zero, right? There's really no loyalty. It's Kaspersky, it's Webroot, who's ever got the best deal is the product that will go. Now, the competition becoming fierce, what companies do to hang on and try to survive are line extensions. They'll keep coming up, well, here's the new Norton, it's faster download, it's this, it's got more bells and whistles. The same thing with toothpaste. I mean, it's got Listerine in it, it's got baking soda, it's whitening. Now, 3D whitening. I mean, I don't know what it means, but just line extensions, right? Tons of products there. So all companies today are in the bloody red oceans. How do you get out of that? Right? That's what we're going to talk about today. How do we get out of that? And I really want to give an appreciation for how difficult it is to get out of that. So in the middle of a transformation, all of us, it's extremely difficult. So it's good to know exactly how hard it is. So as we go through this, imagine yourself, put that hat on of being the leader of a company. Okay? It could be the leader of this company, any company, but imagine this is directed for you and these are your problems. Then you'll gain a full appreciation. And so now blue oceans, right? So all industries not in existence today, unknown market space. Create an uncontested market space that makes the competition irrelevant. So you don't want to compete with the competition, you want to make it irrelevant, which is not easy to do, right? How can you go about that? So we'll talk about a systematic framework or more or less a blueprint that focuses on two aspects, the analytical and the human side of leadership and leading a company and getting people to follow. Okay, first step on a quest for blue oceans are reconstructing market boundaries. So there's 6 paths to market boundaries: alternative industries, strategic groups, chain of buyers, products and services, emotional appeal of buyers, and time. Traditional thinking and traditional analysis leads you towards looking internal within each of these segments. Blue ocean thinking is branching out, and it's looking across all of these. Now think about it. What are we trying to do? We're trying to grow, create new market space, grow demand in aggregate, right? Brand new demand. So not just catering to your existing customers, but reaching new customers. And a lot of times you just can't do it by looking at traditional analysis and benchmarking against your competitors. You want to step away and make them irrelevant. So we'll look at a couple examples here. Alternative industries. So if you take movie theaters, restaurants, and salsa dancing, all of this could be deemed as entertainment for 3 hours, a night out for 3 hours. Now, if you're trying to grow demand in aggregate, and let's just say your Century Theaters competing with another theater, what are they competing on? Price and show times? I mean, they all have the same movie, the same thing. But maybe the thing is to step out, look at what other people are doing with their 3 hours to reach more customers, and understand why people are going salsa dancing over a movie. Right? I mean, I know it's a reach, and I'm just coming up with this one, but maybe there's customers out there who say, well, it costs me $50, $60 for a babysitter, movies, $10, $15 a ticket, popcorn. I'm not going to spend $100 just to go and see a movie. Well, what if the movie theater actually had a daycare in it that watched your children for free? I mean, would that increase demand? Are there ways of exploring that? Or you saw the birth of dinner theaters. Come eat dinner and watch a movie and things like that. That's the level of thinking. That's blue ocean thinking. Okay? Look at what people do before, during, and after they use your product and try and create value. Oh, yeah, there's the babysitting service, right? Next, if you look at strategic groups, you know BMW, you know Mercedes, constantly competing against one another. Sound systems, who has Dolby, who has Harman Kardon, and so on. Leather, right? Who's using Coach, all this, but it's the same thing. They're offering the same thing. Well, what blue ocean thinking is understanding both strategic groups. Understand economy cars, understand luxury cars, and understand why people make that shift in and out of them. Right? What don't they like? What's taken for granted? Where they see the value? Why they trade up? Why they trade down? Okay, that's the thinking, blue ocean thinking. Another one is the emotional appeal of buyers. Now, for years, the pharmaceutical industry, their major customers have always been doctors. Right? Pharmaceutical companies pushing drugs onto doctors, giving samples, this, that, push my drugs. You take insulin, for example. Insulin has been around for years. It has transformed to the needs of doctors. Well, we want syringes, injectable syringes, filled, that'll save us time. We could just go and administer, or any flavor or the liking of it. Well, what the pharmaceutical industry started to do to grow demand is take into account the emotional appeal of buyers. Look at the next step. And they started thinking about the users. Well, users hate taking needles day in and day out. So now they came up with inhaled insulin. Not for the doctors. The doctors didn't care. They just wanted margins on their products and everything. And so they're reaching after adding value. And you could imagine being someone who used insulin, how easy it would be just to inhale like an inhaler to get the dose that you needed. Right? So that's the blue ocean thinking. Stepping away, focus on the emotional appeal of buyers. Reach beyond existing demand. To grow demand in aggregate, this is what you have to do. And there's essentially 3 areas of non-customers, right? To grow demand, you have to reach those non-customers. You have those customers that are soon to be non-customers for some reason, are just dissatisfied or tired of you. The next are refusing non-customers who choose against your market. And the other are the unexplored non-customers, the clueless bunch, right? But they're there. I mean, they can be reached, and over time, they are reached. If you want to see an example, think about Skype, right? So in this example, I'm using seniors, and when I see that phone like that with the big, the big push buttons, I think of Gillette's presentation with clipper ships and just keep on, you know, line extension after line extension, new model, new model. Well, we'll just tailor it for that. Seniors will never go for computers or be savvy like that. But when you see value of being out of the state and talking to your grandchildren face to face like that, you're going to get a computer, right? It's free. There's value in it. And that's why Skype boomed. Same things for international. You're meeting, you're seeing each other face to face. There's value there. And they're able to reach these markets. Another example is Wii for gaming. They didn't focus on gaming. They reached new markets by health and exercise and Zumba or all those other things, tennis, and they reached people who never would have bought a gaming device, ever. So that's blue ocean thinking. 4 actions framework. How do you create a new value curve? You know, how do you go about doing this? And this is what's great about the book. It tells the how. It shows you step by step, right? So how to think, and I'm talking very high level here, but there are details around how to go about each of these areas. But how do we go about creating a new value curve? Well, you want to reduce and eliminate those things that are either costly or no longer appreciated or unnecessary, right? Take those things out. Over time, nothing sustains, right? There's always ways for improvement. Don't just do it because it's always been done. Eliminate it. And then look for ways of creating and raising. Well, what factors do they like that we're not given enough of, right? And raise those, or what needs to be created. And it really is that simple, looking at things at a high level to understand what the market needs. So take Ringling Brothers Circus, for example. Okay, Ringling Brothers dominated for about 100 years the circus industry until alternatives arrived. People got more into sporting, they had their own PlayStations, all of these things were alternate industry choices again, and took away from the circus. They lost popularity with PETA and animals and everything. And if you just looked at the traditional analysis and trends, the circus would have been deemed as a very, very poor industry. Shrinking, no way should you get into this. It's a bloody ocean, it's on the way down, don't invest in it. Well, then Cirque du Soleil comes out, and they came out with their first production, and it goes, "We make the circus irrelevant." And what did they do? They eliminated those things that the circus was known bad and costly, and those things that just weren't good, and elevated and raised. And they, you know, used people instead of animals. There were no paid headliners, artistic music and dance, right? Sophisticated storylines, and multiple productions. So they appealed to a greater market and had people that wouldn't even think about going to the circus coming here. And within 20 years, they created more revenue than the circus did in 100. And this, what's remarkable is it was deemed as a very poor market at the time. And you could just see with the 4 actions framework what they did. Reduce and eliminate, right? Eliminated the star performers, animal shows, those 3 rings. They reduced fun, humor, clowns, and all that type of thing. Thrill and danger at the time. And then they raised unique venue, sophistication level, prices, ticket prices, catering to corporate crowds, and also created themes, a refined environment, and multiple productions, right? It was artistic, music, and dance. So truly remarkable on what they accomplished. Some other examples that were in the book. Now, this is a little dated, right, from '96, and it's always changing. Companies are always changing to create blue oceans. But Curves was a prime example. Now, Curves looked across strategic groups of health clubs and home exercise programs, and they found the flaws that women saw in health clubs, right, being that type of meat market type thing, and all show and mirrors and equipment half-base for men, and dealing with all that. And then they looked at the downside of home videos, the lack of motivation, right, and shared experience and doing things together and just having too many excuses not to put in a workout video. And they came up with Curves, which was designed strictly just for women, casual, motivating, in and out business, get the job done. And it boomed. It really did. They found that niche, came there, and it all boomed. Starbucks is another one, right? They turned the coffee industry on its head by looking at the emotional appeal of buyers. Now, coffee was a commodity, but they created an experience. Come to our coffee houses. Even when they went to Singapore, you learned that it was the #1 place to go on a first date. Starbucks. Right? Total transformation. Intuit did it as well, right? If you think about alternative industries to personal finance software, it was a CPA and a pencil. And they found their niche, right? Their niche there. And how about Casella Wines? How many of you here have heard of Casella Wines? No one? One person. Okay. How about Yellowtail? Hey, a few more people, right? Okay, so Yellowtail, they went after the spirit drinkers and packaged cocktail drinkers. And wine was a stuffy industry, pretentious, and they went after the fun approach in Australia. And really, their products hit the shelf. It was fun to drink, their advertising campaign, and the sales just boomed. Okay? Focus on the big picture, not the numbers. So how do you embark on doing something like this? If you know you want to change a company and have it transition, you can't overwhelm everyone with data, but you have to really focus at a very high level. And they talk about creating a strategy canvas. And the strategy canvas just maps it all out at a very high level. So what does a strategy canvas look like? If we take Yellowtail, for example, you can see where Yellowtail is. You could see premium wines, right? Very high in price. The use of distinction in wine communication. Above-the-line marketing, aging quality, vineyard prestige, wine complexity, all very, very high. And then you had budget wines at a lower level on all those. And then Yellowtail came in, and what did it do? It reduced and eliminated on the left side, and then created easy drinking, ease of selection, fun and adventure. Right? That's how they marketed it. It's a fun wine to drink. And you could see some of the campaigns there. And that's what they went after. Okay? Everything making sense? So getting the strategic sequence right. Number one is buyer utility. There must be a compelling reason for the masses to buy the product, right? You got to have a customer base. They have to want it. You have to go after that. Then the next is to focus on price, right? Is your price easily accessible to the mass of buyers? How's it costed? So that above portion addresses the revenue side of the company. Then there's the cost. Are you making those profits? Now, if you're not making the profits, what can you do? Let's say you got a gangbuster idea and you know the market's ready for it, but you just can't be there and be profitable. Any ideas on what you could do? What's that? Trial? Yeah. Well, or like partnerships, right? Which is like what we're looking to do right now. If you think about us addressing unmet needs and partnering, right, with network providers, that was announced, right? Obviously, we can't do our own, but if we partner, we can go and address new markets at a price. You have to be profitable, where everyone's in business to make money, right? So this all secures the profit side, the cost, and then the adoption. What are the adoption hurdles in executing your business idea? And all that together, hopefully, leads to a commercially viable blue ocean idea. But that's the sequence, that's the structure. Okay, the blueprint itself is not foolproof. Okay, there's a lot that can happen. You could have the best plan in the world. It's not to say it's going to work and it's going to go great. There's three main stakeholders to consider. Number one, employees. You need to adequately address their concerns. Business partners. Whenever you're changing like this, they fear that the revenue streams or market positions are threatened. No one likes this sort of change. It's bold. And then the general public, right? Very new and innovative ideas can threaten the social norm. And that happened with Monsanto. Monsanto had really good intentions with genetically altering crops and fortifying rice for starved countries with vitamins and things like that. And they were vilified for it. You're messing with our food source, you're playing God, and all those things. Now we focus on sort of the human side, right? So what you saw previously was all the analytical. Now it's the human side. And there are 4 key organizational hurdles that leaders must overcome to transform a company towards blue oceans. Number 1 is the cognitive. And the reason the cognitive, people need to be aware that there is the need for change, right? Everyone, you heard the term time and time again about the status quo. The status quo is easy. It's familiar. It's easy on all of us. And people gravitate towards the status quo. So they need to be woken up and realize the need for change. The other is limited resources. Now, that's a major hurdle because when companies finally do wake up and recognize that they need to change, it's usually too late or they're out of money. They don't have money to invest to pursue the thing correctly. And then motivation, right? Motivating all the employees and everyone to be involved and manage this transition. Politics are another hurdle, and we'll talk more about the political hurdles later. Tipping point leaders. So tipping point leaders, they create a positive influence. They challenge conventional wisdom and focus on the extremes. So it's very costly to focus on the masses, each and every employee. They look for an element or some sort of an extreme to create a tipping point, right? It could be an event, it could be an earnings call, it could be some sort of positive news that's a catalyst to drive the masses. Because focusing on each and individual employee to get you on board, it's just impossible. So does everyone know who that picture is up on the right-hand side? Does anyone know who that is? Okay, so that's Bill Bratton, police commissioner of the NYPD, former. And in the 1990s, okay, New York was veering anarchy. I mean, it was terrible. There was a police force that was 36,000 deep. They were all wed to the status quo, not motivated. Crimes were outrageous. They took a lot of heat everywhere, from being a worst-run city, everything. People weren't safe, and so on. Well, Giuliani brought in Bratton, and he was the one who made broken windows famous. He started with the graffiti. The number one thing he did, too, was he noticed right when he went into New York, he didn't like the squeegee people cleaning the windows. They were intimidating, they were drunks, they got abusive, and that was your first impression of New York. He cleaned up all the smallest things. That was a start. And within 2 years, public confidence in the NYPD jumped from 37 to 73%. Job satisfaction reached an all-time high. Felony crime fell 39%. Murders were down 50%, and theft dropped 35%. Now, he did all this with a frozen budget, right? Huge, huge transformation. One person coming into a political nightmare, tough, tough place, 36,000 police officers who were just tired of their jobs, and this guy comes in and transforms all of it. So, I mean, just remarkable what he did. Well, how did he go about doing it? If we look at the 4 hurdles, the cognitive, right? Waking everyone up for the need to change, get away from the status quo. Back then, the subway system, if you looked at data from the subway system, it showed that crime in the subways was no worse off than any other place in New York. It didn't really show that it needed more attention or cleanup or anything. And Bratton knew this wasn't true. He rode the subway to and from work, and he goes, it's a disaster. So what he did was he made all of top and middle management of the police force ride the subway to and from work every single day. And then all of them saw, by the end of a month, all of them knew that I don't care what the data says, things need to change here. It does need to be cleaned up, right? So they awoke to what really needs to occur. And they faced it every day. They saw the winos, the drunks, the illegal activity, and all sorts of things. And they all realized that, yes, it does need to change. So that's the type of experience, right? And even when you hear about Bennett going on his road show and meeting with customers, and you could see what their pain points are, being aware, you have to be in it. You have to know what the employees are thinking, you have to know the marketplace, and so on. You have to do it. You can't keep a blind eye or just look at data and say the data's showing this. Next, the resources. Okay, I like this one. If you look at the picture, what Bratton did was just incredible. Okay, he didn't have the budget to drive change or hire. The old traditional thinking and mindset was, well, to meet this initiative, we would need 45,000 police officers, and we just don't have the money. How can we hire all of these people to fix it? And what he did was he started collecting data, and he realized that the amount of police officers in and spread across all the areas of New York were equal, right? They just dispersed them equally. And he realized that, well, why are we going to have officers here when there's no crime here? And why are we only going to have a couple officers here when there's a ton of crime? And so he shifted officers from hot spots to cold spots. And that had a huge, huge effect, right? Put them to where they need to be. Not only did he do this, he also changed the hours of the narcotics team. They were working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, normal hours, but the drugs were being dealt with on nights and weekends. So he changed the hours to nights and weekends. And he looked at all the data and continued, and also found one staggering bit of data that was the amount of processing time it took for an arrest to be made. So once an officer arrested someone, they had to bring them to the police station and book them and do all this. And it ended up being a 16-hour ordeal just for the cop to arrest someone and get him back on the street. So it's almost like a bee stinging someone, right? You got one sting and that's it. Well, that's it. Your whole shift, you could arrest one person and that's all. What Bratton did there was he used the city's old buses that were no longer in use and positioned them in all the hot areas where crime occurred, and used them as mini police stations, booking stations, and allowed the cops, the officers, to arrest people, turn them in right there, and it took the processing time down from 16 hours to 1 hour. The arrests that went up, they were just staggering. I mean, it just huge, huge impact with no more resources, no more people. It's just eliminating the waste, reducing those things. And that's exactly what Bratton did. If you look at it, he really did, they call it a blue ocean strategy for policing. He came up with the ways of optimizing it, creating value, and so on. And you could see what his strategy canvas looks like, where The number of arrests were a lot lower before he reduced the processing time with buses, and so on. The way profits went up too, another great thing, is on the subway, people were always jumping those turnstiles, right? Like a broken window type thing. If no one's here, no one's watching, why am I going to pay? Just jump over, jump over. Well, he had officers positioned as undercover, dressed as hobos, and anyone who jumped got arrested and put off to the side. And when they collected 25, which they did in like 15 minutes, they would be all hauled off, and that made the profit soar, right? So now you're getting the people, you're nipping it in the bud, and you're cleaning it up. Train sweeps, all that. Use the buses, and you could all see they're all blue oceans. And so now, if you even think about us right now and where we are, and you could easily see what we're doing, where we're picking up and creating blue oceans, right? New things like shareholder value, right? Dividends, things along those lines. The employee value proposition, seeing that employees are taken care of and growth and all that. And I mean, there's a lot there. You guys could see it. And then the areas to reduce, right? And then also with the hot spots and the cold spots. You heard about the sales commissions and farmers and hunters. Same sort of thing, right? If we've got a finite pool of money to be handed out, who should get it? How are you going to do it, right? Motivational hurdles. So Bratton faced those as well. And they talk about having 3 different areas to help jump that motivational hurdle. The kingpins, the fishbowl management, and atomization. So kingpins. What Bratton was looking for, and what any tipping point leader looks for, is that disproportionate tip for the amount of investment. So the mindset was that you would need, if it's a big change, you would need a big, big investment, right? But good leaders know that that's not the case. Focusing on kingpins, what he did was he's created a meeting called CompStat. And what CompStat was he had all the 76 department heads meet together and drove accountability through them. He's like, I could focus on these 76 department heads, and then they'll relate and pass the message down to 36,000 officers on the street. Oops, I hit the wrong button. And so we really focused on them. And what he did was he created CompStat. And with CompStat, what it was dealing with your metrics once a week on a crime in your areas among your peers and among the leader. And everyone, all 76, they didn't want to be outdone, any of them. None of them wanted to look bad. They were all prepared, and they all wanted to shine. And they took everything to heart and driving their area, owning their area, making it great, right? So he focused on them, who they called, those were the kingpins. And then also fishbowl management. Now, fishbowl management is transparency, being fully transparent. And you notice how well we're doing that now, right? Everything between blogs and high-definition videos and all the emails that come out. You need the transparency, and that's what it was. Everything was transparent. No data was hidden. Everyone worked together. And then atomization. So what's atomization? Well, if you have a grand strategy, you can never leave it that grand. It needs to be attainable, right? You need to break it down to its smallest bits so it could be digested and everyone feels that they're a part of it. And what Bratton did was, with his strategy, it was like, we're going to clean up New York street by street, borough by borough, and precinct by precinct. And that's what it was. So every officer who walked the street, they walked that street and they owned it. And they knew that was their part to the bigger mission. Okay? So you could see a lot of the correlation now with us. Political. So there's also political hurdles, right? No one can just walk in and become great. There's resistance. And that's defined as having angels, and the angels are the ones that could gain most by these types of transformations or changes. The devils, those are the ones obviously with the most to lose. And then the little term from The Godfather, the consigliere. And that's a highly respected insider who knows the landmines that could help you and guide you through what to look out for. So one of the first things he did was look for that consigliere, and he hired someone and put him as his right hand and walked through the entire staff of all the leaders and pointed out who would be a roadblock, who wouldn't. And that led to a dramatic changing of the guard right away. Because transforming like this, you do need the buy-in, you do need the right people to be on board, or it will go anywhere. You'll get shut down before you even get started. Okay. Building execution into strategy. The absence or presence of fair process can make or break a company's best execution efforts towards blue oceans. So there needs to be fair process. Fair process is huge among all employees. You need to be treated fairly, to be engaged. You need a complete explanation of your role, what it means, how it correlates to the big picture, right? And the expectation of the clarity and so on. And you see that going on right now with the care taken in the messaging that comes out from top to bottom and so on. Okay. So overall, we looked at the analytical, right? You learned about reconstructing market boundaries, reaching beyond existing demand, the 4 actions framework, right? Eliminating, reducing, raising, and creating. What a strategy canvas looks like, laying it all out with the big picture, getting the strategic sequence right, from buyer utility, must be a compelling reason to buy the product. And then the human side, tipping point leadership. No one could afford to try and change each individual. The 4 organizational hurdles that leaders do face, cognitive was the first one. And then building the execution into strategy. People need to feel that there is a fair process, that you're being treated fairly. Okay, any questions? Okay, some questions?
So I think this is I don't know. I'm just curious, are you supposed to always swim to more blue oceans? Because if you think of concepts like Facebook and things like that, those were blue oceans, but they've become bloody waters, right? There's so much competition there. So then should a company consider looking further over time, or do you try to dominate that ocean?
So that's a good point, and I could have said that. Every blue ocean becomes a bloody red ocean. When anyone comes and creates and untaps a new market, they're all going to come after you, right? And you said Facebook, think about Monster.com, and then Career Builder, LinkedIn, all of that. It's just constantly changing over time. But there are those companies that are first, and then they have a field day, even with like patents on drugs and pharmaceuticals. They can't wait to come in with the generics and have it fair game for everyone to take your profits, right? So it's a trade-off. It depends, but you constantly have to be looking. There's no right or wrong answer, and a lot of times companies miss the market and they mistime the market, or they're too early, right? They do it, you have a finite pool of resources, you invest heavily, you're here, you create the market, and then the customers aren't there, they don't see it, right? And that gets into marketing with the early adopters and so on, and reaching the masses. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have a request, and this is my comment. So when somebody talks about like maximizing a profit or expanding demand, I kind of wonder if it's possible to talk about the betterment of the society and keep in mind that whether the products we are creating make the society and Earth becomes better. And nowadays, there's a shift in consumers' mind. Like they started to ask, like, consumption-based capitalism economy no longer sustain the Earth. So some companies started to use like for example, like, oh, my company cares about recycling, animal, and fair trade. So maybe that might be, I would like to see some comments about that, like when, companies talks about like a future of the, strategies. So,
Yes.
and for example, like Symantec, it focuses on complying with the global social citizenship, and it means like the company needs to comply with the particular criteria, like making sure that there's no abuse for laborers or environment. So maybe that could be a way of generating demand as well as maintaining the blue ocean, because we only have one ocean. So that's my request. Thank you for listening.
Yes, yes. No, that's so true. And a lot of times that would be reflected in stock value with goodwill, right? Goodwill was the appreciation for some of those types of values that you're speaking of. But you're right, when you're dealing with trade and things like that, we should have restrictions on how you do business, right? Okay, good. Anything else? Does everyone see the correlation now between this and Symantec and leading the company through a transformation and some of those things? And I mean, we're in a world today where everything is instant gratification, right? People don't want to wait. You get all this pent-up energy and you see a new strategy, a new direction. We want immediate results. We want it now. But they're hard. And when you think about really going after and addressing unmet needs, those unmet needs, and creating a blue ocean, never mind the in-house R&D, having our own people, getting the most out of them, keeping them creative and innovative, and coming up with products that are going to satisfy demand for years to come, 2-3 years down the road. I mean, it's a big, big undertaking. And everyone needs to be a spoke on a wheel helping the wheels turn. You really do. Everyone takes part. But sometimes you just get removed, you're in your own little bubble, and it's so hard to see the big picture or the true part you're playing. But it's the same steps. And when you talk about a blueprint and a framework, it is. I mean, we look at all these companies over time, and this was the path to success, that strategic move all the way. Patrick?
Yeah, this is really good stuff. My question, perhaps it's a tangent, but I think it's relevant. Could you talk about Bill Bratton's leadership style? Because he introduced a lot of controversial things that probably people didn't really like. There's the hurdles that you talked about. Could you talk about how he actually did that, and maybe if you know any of the inside or more insight into what the reaction was from his peers and how he overcame that?
I mean, at first, everyone would. I'm sure at first, in the beginning, he didn't receive a ton of buy-in, but that's why you have to nip it in the bud right away with getting the right people on board. And he latched on to Consigliere to help him understand what leaders would get in the way. And New York is very political. I mean, you could only imagine. And having a police force and the politics, the mayor, the city, everything is scrutinized. But his thing was immediate results without investing more or doing more. And people, it boils down to all of us. If you felt as an individual that you were overwhelmed every single day in your position and you can't get ahead, that's not a good feeling. He's transformed, him coming in and the momentum, and he transformed the company to each of the 36,000 police force to have them man their streets, and they saw the cleanup. They saw the graffiti being removed. They saw the streets being cleaned up. He received the buy-in from the mayor, and and all this support, and then the headlines started to turn around, and New York's becoming safer, and they saw the numbers. And that was all a catalyst that helped. Now, if you try doing all this for 2 years and there were no improvement, then it's like, you know, you won't have that buy-in and that type of support. But there's always resistance, always. Even if you're doing the right thing, 100%, you're always going to have the pessimist, the negative, and so on. And people do try to derail you, whether it's intentional or not. They can. But you have to know, you have to stay on your course and follow your own plan, if that helps answer it. Anything else? Any other questions? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me. I was happy to do this. Okay, thanks.